Adolf Hitler, a name that instantly floods the mind with terrifying images. Gas chambers, concentration camps, and the haunting horrors of the Holocaust. We've all read about him in books, seen him across the internet, but Mein Kampf, the book written by Hitler himself, gives us a unique window into understanding who he really was. What did he think? What were his dreams? And how did a young boy who once dreamed of becoming an artist turn into one of the most feared dictators in history? In this story, you'll discover what his childhood was like, how his passion and anger were born, and what dangerous ideas shaped him, ideas that changed millions of lives, some towards death, others towards power. Some call him a madman, some a genius. But after hearing this story, you will decide. A boy from Braunau, the beginning of Hitler. I was born in Braunau. Hitler wrote that he was born in a small town on the border of Germany and Austria, and he truly believed it was no coincidence, but a mission. He believed that Germany and Austria shared the same blood, and must one day reunite. This idea later became the foundation of his German unification agenda, his father's shadow, his mother's warmth. Hitler's father was a strict government officer in the customs department. His mother, a simple housewife, full of love and care. Hitler didn't remember much of Braunau because his father was soon transferred to Passau. The family struggled. His grandfather was a poor farmer, and his father had worked hard to earn a government job. His father's dream? That his son would also become a civil servant, an officer just like him. Rebellion in childhood. When a dream becomes a stubborn goal. But young Hitler was different. He resisted every path his father had laid out for him. When he first said, "I want to become a painter," it was like a storm had erupted at home. His father was furious. "As long as I'm alive, you will never become an artist." But this boy was equally stubborn. He loved books, especially those about war and history. He could spend hours staring at the illustrated pages of books about the Franco-German War of 1870, school fights, and a search for identity. Hitler's school life was strange. He excelled in subjects he liked and failed miserably in the rest. His report card always read both excellent and inadequate. But in history and geography, he was always unbeatable. Facing death at 13, everything went on until at age 13, his father passed away. And just 2 years later, he lost his mother too. Now Hitler was alone. He had dreams, but no one to support him. He made a decision. He would now make it on his own. Just like his father once did, he too set out for Vienna. But not to become an officer. His goal was the Academy of Art. But fate had other plans. Hitler applied to art school and was brutally rejected. And that was the turning point, from where his life began to spiral into darkness. Part 2. The Struggling Years in Vienna. When dreams shattered and hatred was born. I still remember the day I took the entrance exam for the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts. I believed my art was unique, the best. But when the results came, it felt like the ground slipped from beneath my feet. I was brutally rejected. All my dreams collapsed in an instant. Hunger pushed me to paint small pieces and do manual labor just to afford 2 meals a day. A burning passion amidst dying dreams, working during the day, and reading through the night. Many times I would skip food just to buy books, because knowledge had become my true treasure. Books became my world. But in this world, 2 faces began to disturb me deeply. Jews and Marxists. On the streets of Vienna, in trams and theaters, I saw them everywhere. And the more I saw, the more restless and angry I became. Through Hitler's eyes, the Jewish community. Seeing them made me feel those who call themselves the chosen ones were from the inside hollow. Their clothing, their language, their behavior, it all felt alien to me. They were completely different from the German culture I held close. I saw their literature, their theater, their art, and to me it all seemed like poison for our culture, a disease silently eating away at the roots of our society, clashes with Marxism and trade unions. I worked at a construction site where I often clashed with trade union leaders. They claimed to be the saviors of workers, but in truth they were only filling their own pockets. Slowly I began to realize these social democrats, these unionists, these thinkers, most of them were Jewish. I read in books and saw for myself that the faces behind Marxism were the same. David, Adler, Ellenbogen, all from the same background, a spark of fury. A fire had started to burn inside me. I began to wonder, who are these people to tell us how our society should run? We Germans? Who have the power to lead the world, who symbolize culture and leadership? How could an external ideology even attempt to break us? I believe that some people are born to lead. Every individual has a place in this world, and breaking that order is the greatest threat to humanity. To me, Marxism now seemed like a toxic conspiracy, a strategy through which the Jews wanted to shape the world according to their own design. I am fulfilling God's will. This was no longer just a personal battle for me. I began to feel that I was living for a greater mission, that people like me were born to protect our society, our blood, our culture from these external infections. 1912. When I left Vienna and Munich called tired of the streets of Vienna, I made my way to Munich, and it felt like my soul could breathe again. Munich, the city of German art and strength. Its streets, its people, its language, everything felt like home. Among the people of Bavaria, I felt my past come alive once more. For me, Munich was not just a city, it was the beginning of a new life. Part 3, when the whole world caught fire. The war that awakened my soul, 1914. A year when the winds across Europe carried restlessness. People were tired of instability, of uncertainty. Everyone was waiting for a major change. And then came the First World War. But this wasn't a war forced upon them. The people wanted this war. There was a fire inside them, a desire for a conflict that would cleanse everything. Talks of peace now seemed outdated, and the Austria-Serbia dispute was merely a spark. Will we ever become a united German nation? That question hung in the air. It wasn't about who would win, Austria or Serbia. The real question was, will the German people finally find their true identity? Millions were ready to give their lives, all in the hope that their nation would rise, united and powerful. The assassination of Archduke and unrest in Munich. When the news of Archduke Franz Ferdinand's assassination broke, it was as if flames spread through Munich. Rumors, rage, and one overwhelming emotion filled the streets. Something big is coming. Even I felt a strange excitement welling up inside me. I looked up at the sky and silently thanked God that I was about to witness history unfold. This isn't just a war, it's a war for honor. I realized this fight wasn't merely between two nations, it was a fight for Germany's soul. If we won, the world would see us as the strongest nation, and if we lost, everything would collapse. The call of a young man, a burning desire to serve. I couldn't sit still. I wrote directly to His Majesty, asking for permission to join the Bavarian army. When the reply came, my hands trembled. As I opened the letter, tears streamed down my face. I had been accepted. That very moment, I put on my tunic, the uniform that would become part of my body for the next 6 years. The first march, the first roar. We sang the German national anthem with pride. Germany, Germany above all. The night was bitter cold, but there was no cold in our hearts. We, some young men, some barely boys, were on our way to Flanders. But just 4 days later, when we returned, we were no longer boys. We were soldiers, rifles in our hands, and in our eyes, only one dream, to make our nation great. Part 4, when war ended and revolution began. A soldier's heart broke, and a leader was born. September 1916. The Battle of the Somme, a battlefield. Where the ground trembled, the sky had torn open, and death floated in the air with every breath. For weeks, the roar of cannons didn't stop. Smoke, screams, and blood everywhere. But our German army still held its ground. Even if we fell back one day, we stood back up the next. Because defeat was not a word in our dictionary, not bullets, but wounds took me down October 1916. In a violent attack, I was seriously wounded. I was removed from the front and sent back to Germany. For the first time in 2 years, I stepped back onto German soil. But it wasn't the same Germany I had left behind. Soft bed sheets, but a mind in revolt, nurses whispered gently around me in the hospital. While outside, the world I once knew had shattered. For me, it felt unreal. Yesterday, the blood-soaked battlefield was my home. Today, I lay in a warm hospital bed. Once I recovered a little, I requested leave to visit Berlin. What I saw there shook me to the core. Munich, Berlin, Germany had lost its soul. Hunger, despair, and rage everywhere. People fighting each other, Bavarians clashing with Prussians. And among all this, some faces were smiling quietly behind the curtains. The Jews. They didn't fire the bullets, but drank the most blood. In offices, in administration, in army barracks, the same faces, clerks who never went to war, yet profited off our sweat and blood, war supplies, gun deals, ammunition. For them, war was business. The longer it dragged on, the more they earned, while the soul of Germany kept slipping away. 1918. We didn't just lose a war, we lost our identity, or remember 1918. The war ended. Kaiser Wilhelm II compromised with the Marxists, and Germany, once the land of emperors, was now a republic. That day, I was still in the hospital. My eye was injured, but the wound to my heart, that would never heal. I was broken. Not since my mother's death had I cried, but that day I wept, because it felt like everything was for nothing. Our sacrifices, our fallen brothers, all crushed and thrown into the dirt. My first step into politics, but I trusted no one. I was no longer fit to fight, so I decided my fight will no longer be with bullets, but with ideas. I joined politics, but I didn't trust any party's ideology because I saw myself as only one thing, a National Socialist, a mission God had given me. For me, this wasn't just politics, it was my responsibility to my people, to my fatherland. To preserve the purity of our blood, to give future generations a stronger, united nation. Every thought, every action would now serve this mission. 1919, the speech that changed everything. One day, during a training session, a man began praising the Jews. I couldn't stay silent. I stood up and spoke, and saw that the entire group of soldiers agreed with me. That day, I realized my voice had power. Now, words were my bullets. Soon, I was appointed as an educational officer in the army. I began motivating thousands of soldiers, reminding them of their duty, inspiring them to rise again for the nation. I knew one thing, my words were my greatest weapon. The birth of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. I gathered people who thought like me, taught them discipline, and launched a new movement, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. That was the beginning of my journey. And this was my next war, a war of ideology. Part 5, Nation and Race, the roots of Hitler's ideology. What gave birth to his dangerous beliefs? Some thoughts. They may not come to a person by birth, but are shaped by time and experience. Hitler's ideology was born from that very process, laws of nature, and the world of humans. Hitler believed that just as animals naturally stay within their species, humans too should have certain boundaries. He used to say, "A lion stays with a lion, a rat stays with a rat. If different species start mixing, the next generation becomes weaker." According to him, nature's purpose was to preserve racial purity, from animals to humans, his controversial theory. Hitler tried to apply the natural behavior of animals to human society. He believed that when different human groups intermarry, it leads to a kind of contamination, one that slowly destroys intelligence, strength, and beauty. The Aryan race, Hitler's vision of superiority. He considered the Aryan race to be the most advanced in the world. It was the Aryans who laid the foundation of civilization. Without them, there would be no science, no technology, no culture. In his mind, the rest of the world fell into two categories, followers and destroyers, but the Aryans, they were the creators of culture, of progress, and of humanity itself. Latin America versus North America, a racial comparison. Hitler believed that North America became powerful because it preserved racial purity. Latin America fell behind because of racial mixing. Wherever there was racial mixing, culture was destroyed. Wherever race remained pure, progress followed. Criticism or understanding. While reading this chapter, it's important to remember, These were Hitler's personal beliefs based on a racist worldview. Today's world rejects such thinking and stands for diversity, cooperation, and equality as the true keys to progress. Still, as part of this documentary, it's crucial to understand how such thinking developed in that time and what impact it had. Part 6, The Right to Emergency Defense and the Final Thought. The right of emergency defense. The years 1918 and then 1923. Germany once again stood at a turning point in history, where some people within the system chose compromise over revolution. Hitler believed that Germany's defeat in 1918 wasn't just from external enemies but from traitors within. We didn't give in to our enemies, we gave in to the traitors. In his view, Marxist ideology and Jewish leadership had weakened Germany from the inside, shaking the very foundation of the nation. The 1923 uprising Hitler and his party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, decided it was time to rebuild Germany. Nations can't be saved by speeches, they need action. But in November 1923, when the Nazi Party was banned, it felt like those voices would be silenced forever. However, you can crush movements, but not mindsets. A warning and a will. In 1926, when Hitler completed his book, he made a bold claim. Our party is stronger than ever. Our race, our personality, and our will. These are our true power. The slogan, Germany, Germany above all, was no longer just words. It had become a mission. Conclusion. Now, you decide. By now, you've understood how Hitler thought, how he saw himself as a savior, and how he turned pain and confusion into a dangerous ideology. But that thinking never united people. It divided them based on race, religion, and identity. And today we are more connected than ever. Through the internet, technology, and shared humanity. We may look different, we may speak different languages, but deep inside, we're all human. We all love our families. We all dream big. We all seek respect, peace, and purpose. So the question is for you now. Will you choose hate or understanding, anger or compassion, a closed mind or an open heart? Mein Kampf showed you one way of thinking, but the thinking you choose for your life, that's your decision. At Book Blink, we don't just tell stories, we offer you a new lens to think. If this video gave you something to reflect on, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll meet again in the next story, with a new question and a new perspective, to be continued in your mind.